Welcome to another episode of Ask the Attorney. I am Attorney Vivian Bastawros, and today I'm going to talk to you about corporal punishment, also known as spanking. The question I'm usually asked is it legal to spank your kids in the United States of America? Let me tell you a story. When I was young, I have two younger brothers. They were in elementary school. Now, one day, they decided not to come home from school. Instead, they went to a friend's house. At that time, we didn't have cell phones. There was no way to contact them. And 2 hours later, my parents had called the police. The school was on lockdown. All the teachers were notified. They were looking for all the sex offenders in the area. The street got cornered off. The building was searched. They were just at a friend's house. By the time they walked in, the police officer was mad, my mother was crying, my father was out of his mind. As the police officer, who was disgusted at this point, was walking out, he turned to my father and he said, "What you need to do is give those boys a good spanking, and they'll never do that again." My question to you is the police officer right? Are you allowed to spank your kids? Let's ask the people.
Growing up in an Egyptian family, it is okay, but yet now there's a new way of doing things. So I don't think spanking is allowed right now, and we should not be accepting that.
Definite no, because when you spank your kids, if you're in a broken home, then you're basically telling this kid that he could touch someone else, and this could never happen. Although some kids get spanked when they're younger and they're much better now, but most domestic violence and dating violence that occur in the United States is based on broken homes and kids being abused from a younger age. So spanking your kids isn't something that should be tolerated. I think that it's something other than tradition and cultural aspects of it. It's not something that should keep going on, because spanking your kids is basically you're teaching them that they could touch another person, and that is not right.
Yes and no. If your kid is not behaving, then of course you have to teach him to do the right thing. But if it's for the right and you're teaching your kid to be a better person when he grows up, then definitely do it.
I think to a certain extent you can give them consequences, but I don't think that you should treat them on violence, because then you're going to teach them later on to have aggression and anger.
When you're raising your kids, it's okay to teach them the right things, but it doesn't necessarily have to be with spanking.
The answer is yes. In the United States of America, parents have the constitutional right to discipline their children, including spanking them. Let's first define the term corporal punishment or spanking. Spanking is inflicting pain upon a child without injury, the intent being to modify that child's behavior. Here's the problem with that. When police officers tell parents they can hit their children, when doctors tell parents it's okay to give a little spanking, they are people of authority. When they tell parents to do that, they don't explain to the parents that the reason for the corporal punishment is to change the behavior of the child. So let me ask you this, for my brothers, why wouldn't my father be spanking them? Do you think after what happened they would ever not come home for hours and hours after they had the walk of shame through the neighborhood, after all their teachers and friends know, after the police officers yelled at them? Do you think they're ever going to do that again? No, and they never did. Why spank them? It was a form of punishment. If you are spanking your kids as a form of punishment, you are not doing corporal punishment. You are, in fact, child abusing them. Child abuse, assault, battery, domestic violence. That's what it's called if you're spanking your kids to punish them. It doesn't matter if it was a slap or a pinch or a pulling of the hair. What does the law say? The law says you are allowed to inflict pain on your child without causing injury because your intent is to change their behavior. Not punish their behavior, change their behavior. Now, what happened with my brothers is my dad, having been instructed by the police officer to spank them, instructed them to walk into the room and lay themselves on the bed and be prepared for their spanking. My parents never spanked us, didn't even know how to spank us. And so what my dad tried to do is hit my brother at the bottom of his feet. It became a family joke because there was no infliction of pain. And what happened is my little brother started giggling. And when he started giggling, my other brother started giggling. Then I started giggling. My mom started giggling. My dad started laughing. And it became a memory for our family that was positive. What could have gone wrong is it could have been a memory of pain instead of a memory of laughter. And I want you to hold on to that, because so many times when we come from another culture, we come from another country, we don't understand what's acceptable here and what's acceptable in the country where we were. For example, we had a family come new from Egypt to our church, and no one understood what spanking is and what your rights are. And the parent slapped the child. The child called 911 because they were told at school that if somebody touches you, you call the police. They called 911 and children's services came to the house and an investigation started, and the family was very afraid they were going to lose their children, and they might have. So they were on the next plane back to Egypt, and their whole dream of immigration to the United States and a better future for their family was destroyed because of a slap on the face. And it may have been completely legal, but the child called 911, a report was made, and if a report is made, it has to be investigated. And that could have torn that family apart. So, let's talk about the consequences of what could happen to you if you are accused of corporal punishment, spanking your child, and going beyond what's legally allowed. Remember, what's legally allowed is inflict pain, do not cause injury, and the intention is to change the behavior of the child. It's discipline. It is not punishment, contrary to what it is called. If someone notifies children's services, let's be clear, only parents are allowed to do this. If a teacher, a principal, a babysitter, a daycare worker were to slap, same exact conduct, they would be arrested. Only parents have the constitutional right to discipline their children. If someone other than your parents should ever try to physically discipline you, you do call 911. You do report it to somebody in authority, and you do tell your parents. Here's the scary part. If a parent is accused of going beyond what they're allowed to do for spanking, they can be accused of assaulting their child, battery on their child abuse, domestic violence. They can cause injury to their child. It may be found that the amount of force you used to slap the child was not reasonable because the child was too young, you were too strong. We don't know. The other thing, and very familiar with this in Florida, is Department of Children and Family. If a report is made to the Department of Children and Family, how could it happen? You're spanking your child at home. Well, your child goes to school and tells their friend, and the teacher overhears, I can't do that, my dad will spank me again. The teacher has no choice but to report it. It's mandatory that they report it. If they are reported, what happens? What happens is, in Florida, DCF will either do an investigation or an immediate removal of the child. They will do an immediate removal of the child if they feel the child is in danger. And poof, your child is gone. Spoke to an attorney yesterday. She told me about an ex-husband who made a report that his ex-wife had physically abused their child, and 5 days before Christmas, DCF came in and removed the child. Did not ask questions, did not interview anybody because there was a danger. First thing they do, remove the child. Then you have hearings, you may have to go through therapy, you may be found not guilty, but you will not have your child back until everything has been investigated, and even if everything is investigated to the satisfactory of everybody involved, DCF will still be visiting your home for years to come, and should this issue ever arise again, or you be found guilty, or anybody accuses you of anything, it will come up again. Is it worth it? You decide. What will happen if you are found guilty of assault, battery, or child abuse, which means that the force you used was unreasonable, your intention was to punish and not fix your child's behavior, or you inflicted an injury? You go to jail, prison, depending on the seriousness of your conduct. Okay. The last thing I want to address is hitting your parents back. So the scenario is father hits his son, slaps him, spanks him, as allowed by the United States Constitution and totally legitimate. Child, 15-year-old son, 6 feet tall, says, I feel like he's hitting me and I can't get away, and punches father back. Father goes down, neighbors call the police come to the house. Here's what could happen. Father is allowed to spank child. Child not allowed to hit back. Child gets arrested for assaulting the father. Father says no. Police say it is a crime. We have no choice but to arrest your son. So, what do you do in a situation like that? You need to try to get away. You get away, protect yourself, don't hit back unless you feel like your life is in imminent danger. The best thing to do is to avoid violence altogether. There's no reason to have Department of Children and Family or the courts involved in your family relationship. So, to sum up, corporal punishment, legal in the United States of America, constitutional right to discipline your children. 3 rules are: you can cause pain, you cannot inflict injury, and your intention must be to fix the behavior that you are addressing. It is not to punish or hurt the child. No one else is allowed to discipline your child through spanking, only the parents. Special note here, are step-parents allowed? Vague. Unless the step-parent adopted you, the minor, they are not legally your parent. So we have to watch out for. Last point, you cannot hit your parents back. You can only report the abuse and try to get away. Thank you.